Navy diving, we used to come on holiday a lot down to the Cape as a family when we used this flat. And towards the end of our school holidays, obviously, it's family outings. You followed the parents around, and we ended up going to the winelands for a day. And I was at that time probably like 8 or 9. Walked into a cellar, and it must have been just before after harvest. You can get a typical cellar smell. I'll never forget that. And I looked at this and never knew of it as a career choice. Even more so when I went back to school up in Joburg, and they didn't even know what it was. They thought winemakers were just like mechanics that work in the background. And yeah, I started in high school and was already reading the wine magazine. I remember the first one that came out was Peter Ferreira on the front cover. And yeah, my mom has always been very free to let us follow our own paths. And what happened is the platter was still very thin in 95, and there wasn't emails yet. So we set up a letter and sent out faxes to potential farms that I just sort of earmarked in the platter, and came up to Kaapstad, the Statler family. And I was obviously just out of matric, 19, and they took me on more. It was actually Ingvild, Dani's wife, that sort of pushed me more as help for Dani. Dani Senior had never had anyone before, and I then took a job there more as eyes for people stealing wine out the cellar. But it was then I actually ended up staying 3 years with them and became part of the family. And really, I'm very close to Dani Jr. We sort of brothers from another mother type thing, because he was in standard 7 or 8 when I met him. And when he realized that as a winemaking family, he took it for granted almost that you're born in this industry. But then he saw the passion that I had for not having that, call it generational right to take over a farm. And it really drove to him that he understood that he had a great opportunity within his family to start. And that's where he is. And he's doing a great job running the family business there now. Spent 3 years with them, and then worked for a mobile bottling company. Was very interesting. Got to meet a lot of different farms that you would not have necessarily have known from. That's how I met David from Glencarlo. They didn't have a bottling line at that time, and he sort of offered me a job after seeing how I worked on the line and that. And I was a little weary. I said no the first time, and then did a bottling again with him, and he sort of pressed again, and it's like, oh, and I said, okay, well, let's go for it. So then I actually, before starting at Glencarlo, which was middle of 99, I then went to America to Hess Collection, which was part of the Glencarlo group in those early years, and did a harvest there. And started at Glencarlo in 2000, and then did vintages in Australia, France, Germany, and Austria over the couple of years. And then Glencarlo started getting quite large, and David Finnison, the whole farm was sold in the the mid 2000s, and then David left in 2009, and I took over as head winemaker and continued there until 2016. The reason I left Glencarlo was I'd been there 17 years. It was like almost part of the furniture, and I decided if I don't do it now, I'll regret it. So I decided to start my own company, which was when I started Lahman Wines. First vintage was 2017. So I finished at Glencarlo end of 2016, and Lahman Wines is still, it's only year 3 now. But that's where I am. So I buy wines from different regions. I'd only worked with Paarl grapes for so many years that it was now time to say, well, let's try and do Chardonnay from a cooler climate. There's a couple of independent that are multi-regional, which is also interesting, and it gives you a bit of diversification of working with a specific variety in a different area.
Wow, this is interesting. So I just want to know, Arco, if you, I mean, you knew from a young age that that you're going to be in the wine industry. At what age did you start drinking wine?
It's funny. My parents are not big wine drinkers. My heritage is Dutch. Arco is obviously the unusual name. It's sort of a mix from Anko and Arno. And Laman, there's not many Lamans in the country, but the interest I had actually sort of made interest in my parents, so that they live up. They moved to Cosmos in Hartbeespoort. They've got a beautiful guest house there. They actually literally put a cellar into the mountain for the guests, but for myself to play a bit. And yeah, I didn't actually drink a lot of wines until I started at Kaapstad. I would more manage their sort of cellar. So I would see certain wines ahead and then let's keep that and let's see if that's going to stay. And my dad also, I entered a Chateau Libertas box competition, not box, I mean like a wooden box, not bag in the box, but it was a wine magazine competition. I had to use my dad's details because it was still underage. And then he got this letter that we were one of the 50 guys to win this box. And it's actually a beautiful Chateau Libertas vintage, when it still had those gold Superior stickers from 1982, 3, 4, 5, 6 vintages of 6 bottles. My dad almost threw it away because he thought it was a promotion, but then he actually saw that we won this thing. And it was me as a minor that's now trying to win competitions out of the wine magazine.
Well, that's fantastic. So tell us a bit, how you started Laman Wines, the wines you are making, and also, I mean, your winemaking philosophy.
Look, a lot of it comes from my philosophy in wine is also more driven towards the varieties that I work with. To be fair, my company is only 3 years old now. There are certain wines and projects still up and coming, but obviously having spent 17 years at Glencairn, Chardonnay became part of my blood. It's obviously one of the strongest products for Glencairn. And so Chardonnay is for me very important in my business. And I started, like I said, in the beginning of 2017. I had my sort of entry level. I've got 2 ranges. So I've got my entry level or mid range called Cluster Series, which was a Chardonnay from Pekingese Kloof. Well, the first year was actually from Elgin, and then the 17 is from Pekingese Kloof, and a Cab, which the initial vintage was Paarl, and now it's Stellenbosch. And then my second range is the Focal Point wines, and those are very more site specific as well, with a Chardonnay from a region called Vermaaklikheid. I'm sure you've heard of it. There near Riversdale on the Duivenhoek River. Mm-hmm. And then a Cinsault, which I did in 2017, which was Stellenbosch. In 2018 is Achterperl, beautiful bushvine stuff. And then an old wine Shannon from a block in Paarl, as old as me. I was born in 1977, so it's a 43-year-old vineyard. And my philosophy is, look, keep things simple. It's interesting. I always dealt with, you get all the smoker coming to sell you additives and barrels and staves and this and that. And I believe that wine is a natural product. If you have good grapes, you can bring all the flavors you need direct from the vineyard by not having to add anything that you would maybe see in a cooperative situation. I do use cultivated yeast with my Chardonnay because Chardonnay is a neutral variety. So I do experiment with different yeast strains. But otherwise, a lot of my stuff is also natural fermentation. But people must forget, people talk about natural wines, yeast is natural. So whether it's cultivated by Anchor, as long as it's not a GMO, it is the same thing as a natural yeast, but it's just been gone through a process where it is more active than natural ones. But there's definitely differences in that, and I'd like to get diversity in my Chardonnay to get different flavor components. out of it from the yeast and from the barrels.
Very interesting. You mentioned that you're looking at wines from different areas, and specifically wines that are, grapes that come from a specific place. Can you explain to us what Cape Sites is and how that works?
It's called Cape Site Specific. It's a group that we started, me and probably about eight producers at the time. It was more about sharing a standard Cape wine. But as we know, wine is sold by stories and philosophies and that. And what we put together is a group that believe in wines with a sense of place. So to be part of this group, your wines have to qualify for their origins. So you can't have wines from Western Cape or blended between Paarl and Stellenbosch. The minimum criteria is that it must be at least wine of origin Stellenbosch, but the best thing is to go from there to Ward to as close as you can to single vineyard. So I have a wine that comes from a single vineyard, not it's not been certified yet for the 2020 vintage. It's a single vineyard, which is that old vine Shannon and I was talking about. So the more specific you get and the more driven to the site is the story. So we're now on our 4th year together. Very different under the circumstances with COVID. We're all working from home and talking to each other. It's funny, the winemakers are always very social people, and I actually went out yesterday to go and do something, but we don't see each other as much as we did in the past. But yeah, we're all like-minded and like to have wines with a sense of place. That's the most important message that we're trying to push through into the market.
So Cape Sites, is that official? Is that an organization with a brand? Is it branded, certified? Is it a non-profit? How does it work?
It's called Cape Site Specific, and it's set up as a company, as an organization, and we pay a fee to be part of it. And if we want to do an event, then it's like pay as you go in whether you want to do it or not. And look, the idea for us is actually sort of to have a good pool of money from all of us together, and then to invite people from overseas and sort of work together with Warsaw to create content. Like the Swartland has done really, really well. Like, you need to create content in the industry to be able to tell your stories and that. So that's how it's been driven. It's not about making money. It's just about making it operate under our membership fees and what we're willing to take part in as a member.
So are the wines labeled in some way so that you can see it? How does the consumer know this comes, or is it how does that work at the moment?
We haven't gotten to that stage yet where we have a seal or something. It's not like the Old Vines group yet. But you bring up a good point. We don't have anything specifically on our labels yet that mention that. It's more about the events that we do together. But yeah, that is something we should look at maybe is to add something onto the bottle that can at least bring you to the website to understand our philosophies, and that's similar to the wine seal, the certification seal. Not everybody, we in the industry know what it stands for, but even the well-known wine drinker with knowledge doesn't fully understand what even the seals that we have on the labels actually represent. But that's all about getting the message out there, and that's yeah.
It's like you say, it's creating content and raising awareness. It's like anything, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes, yeah.
So, okay, your wines, where are you selling? Are you selling in the local market only? Are you exporting? How do you work?
I think we all know that the South African market is pretty flooded. I think if you think now, I think the latest number here was 6,000 different wines available under different brands and that type of thing. So my focus was really to drive the international market side. So my wines are local and international, but I'm really pushing on the export side. I export to Belgium, Mauritius, UK, trying to get into Holland, America. I'm still working on. But yeah, export is important, but then local as well. But obviously, being a small independent producer, I'm not going to be selling at the macros and doing pellet deals and that type of thing. So it's more your independent. So the well-known guys like Wine Menu up in Joburg, all the wine concept stores down here, 1 or 2 liquor cities. The well-known one in Claremont, Liquor City, he's got best range of wines, a largest range of wines and gins and all sorts of things. So he's always keen to take on new wines. And then obviously direct consumers, where we and any winery makes the best margins is with, if you have a cellar door or do events that you drive your direct sales, which is something I'm very much focusing on, which I think we all are now in this COVID thing, is that online wine sales have increased dramatically, and online wine shops, just trying to push those sales that you're not getting in the restaurants anymore, or the reduction of availability in the liquor stores, and only having a 5-day, no, 4 days. You can only buy alcohol 4 days of the week. So yeah, it's, I don't know, for the bigger guys to work out budgets and that this year, I'm glad I know I've got only a certain amount of wine to sell, but for the big boys, it's a bit scary.
Yeah, then you don't want to sit with a cellar full of wine when you get your next harvest in, right?
No, exactly. Yeah.
I think what's interesting to me is that you mentioned direct to consumer, which you're right. It's growing a lot, but also you said events. So do you do pop-up tastings?
Yeah, I actually had just started that just before the lockdown. I did my first one at the winery where I buy the Chenin from. Then my idea was to do it at certain, either to use a restaurant or certain of the guys, like the Sommelier Association in Stellenbosch, or a wine bar somewhere that uses my wines and that. So that was the idea, is once a month to do like a pop-up tasting, but that's all gone at the moment. So we don't know when we can all have a glass of wine together with a meal, or get together to do a tasting. So yeah, that is the way. I haven't been doing a lot of online Zoom meeting tastings, that type of thing. It's very difficult to do that as well. You can't drop everybody a bottle of wine. We're, as Cape Side, specifically trying to figure out, well, let's take a 750 ml bottle and put it into 50 ml little bottles and send it out, and you do a group tasting with someone. But it's logistics and timings and all of that. And to be fair, I think there's people being a bit overrun with some of these things maybe. So, but yeah, it's important to get to the direct consumer.
So besides that, I see on your website you also offer winemaking consultancy service. I was wondering about that, and also, what other services do you offer?
Yeah, there's look, because I work for myself. I'm not as hectic as when I was working at Glencola. When I left there, I think we were bottling 650,000 bottles, which keeps one very, very busy. With myself, I utilize cellar space near me here in Paarl, so that keeps me busy maybe 2-3 days of the week. Obviously, wintertime is more quiet time for winemakers. You've got everything to barrel and everything sulfate up and everything safe. So I offer, any consultancy for small guys that don't have the budget for, say, only producing 5 or 10 tons for a small guest house winery or whatever. So I can do little parcels for them if they have their own vineyards. And then obviously anything from packaging for other people that are looking for a winemaker that can do everything from finding bulk wines, doing bottling for them, and so on. It hasn't been such an active part of my business, but there's sort of 2-3 people that I have as a concern that I do this for now, which is great. It sort of just puts a little bit more into the bank account without having to sell wine.
Interesting. So you've mentioned the coronavirus and the lockdown a bit, and it's forced all of us to actually rethink our business models. So do you have
Yeah.
any changes or new ideas that came to mind while you were sitting there in lockdown?
Yeah, look, there's again, I'm really pushing on the export side. There's one or two new opportunities coming my way, which will really help, because obviously we for 2 months couldn't sell anything here locally, but like in the UK, there's online companies that have been selling throughout the lockdown, and it's been like Christmas for them for the last 3-4 months. So people are not going out, but people are ordering wine, and we weren't able to do that. So there is definitely a demand, and a bit of a gap. Unfortunately, some people did lose the business due to those 2 months where they had potential listings with some of the larger Systembolaget in Sweden and whatever. But yeah, just really looking at again, like I said earlier, that is my model, is exporting, and just making that grow strength from strength in this environment at the moment.
So interesting to me is, it's European summer now, well, the whole Northern Hemisphere. And this is
Yeah.
obviously a high consumption time. So what about logistics? If you get orders now, are you managing to get them out?
Yeah, there's in general, there is a bit of a bottleneck at the harbour. But since the export allowance was lifted, that we can export again, I actually had it. Yeah, I sent some wine to Belgium, and yeah, it took the usual 3-week turnaround. It wasn't too bad. Obviously, if you want to still get into that rosé season for the UK, you want the stuff on the water now before their season stops. So I don't know. I'm looking at doing it possibly next year. But yeah, our timings have been out because specifically those 2 months where we were not allowed to export. Definitely certain products, not only wine, but if you think of some of the beers and sort of ciders and things like that, they've lost a huge chunk of business because you've now something that should have been there 2 months ago is 2 months behind. So it's not easy.
Yeah, by the time it gets there, it's winter.
Yeah, exactly.
Starts. So yeah, that is the issue. So okay,
Yeah.
I mean, you've had an interesting journey in the wine industry. What is the most important thing that you've learned so far from your wine journey?
Look, the thing is that there's a lot of competition. That's I did know that before I started my own business. It's anyone, winemakers can make wine, and we all can make wine, or estates can make wine, but it's another thing to sell it. It's a big part of our industry is marketing and being out there. So that's really been, it's not I'd say life lesson in the wine industry. It's definitely, I've known it as a learning curve that you're going to be marketing all the time. But I won't regret having gotten into the industry over 20. When are we on? My first vintage I did was in '96. So yeah, it's a long time. I've been in PAL for 20 years. And me and my wife have now actually decided to move to a cooler area. And I think it's also more maybe part of my Chardonnay compass going on. We're going to be moving to Onrus, and I'll look at some area there to higher space and really look at cooler climate Chardonnay from Elgin or the Cape South Coast, getting a bit closer to for Marklegate, so I don't have to drive as far to get the grapes. And yeah, we'll hire her there for a year and see if it works. Our daughter is not old enough to get into school. Actually, I mean, she's still young enough before she needs to start anything. And yeah, I've got good friends there. Hannes Storm, obviously the Finnersons from Croatia, I know well. So if they can do it, I'm sure it's possible. So that's hopefully the next 20 years in my wine journey
Well,
looking at that.
I just wanted to ask you that because, I mean, you're still young and your business is even younger. So what is your long-term vision? Where are you going to take Larman Wines? What is your plan?
Obviously to make it as profitable as possible. What I've actually done with my packaging is, if you look at the labels, it's very much driven on the names. So you got Focal Point Chardonnay, and the story is specific variety from a specific region, and then the cluster series, which means cluster obviously means a bunch of grapes. So I need one berry can be perfect, but you need a whole cluster to fill a glass of wine, and even more so to fill a bottle. So I use my name to endorse my wines, but I think what my plan is in the next 20 years is that I can push these wines, get the brands strong enough out there that they can actually be freestanding brands on their own. That I don't sell my name, but I can sell those brands to someone who's interested in increasing the size of it. Or I'd have to see if my daughter wants to get into wine, but she's only 3, so I'm not going to push her on whether she's going to be in my footsteps. But
it sounds like in your family, I have to start drinking at 7, right? To be a winemaker, to be a winemaker at 16.
No. So we'll see. But hopefully. Yeah, obviously we all want to put food on our plates and have a comfortable life. And the wine industry can do that if you just keep your nose to the grindstone, create quality wines that people enjoy, and look at old vines as becoming quite a strong marketing part of South Africa, and maybe get more involved in that, looking at different regions. If you look at Chris Arlight, he lives in that area that I'm talking about, Onrus, but he's buying grapes from all the way up in Pekingese Kloof and all over. So he's also a bit more multi-regional. So that's the different side of being sort of the old 1980s landgoed or estate wines. But we'll see what happens in 20 years. We can have this conversation in 5 or 10 years from now again. It doesn't have to be that long. But hopefully I'm staying on a stronger foot, or we all are.
Yes, I really hope so. Can you give us your very own wine quote?
Your
favorite one.
I was struggling a little bit with that. My wife, I do tend to have a good sense of humor sometimes when get put in the spot. But obviously, Chardonnay is a very big part of me, and there was that time when I was traveling in the US, or actually it's the US is part of the problem, is that they were making these heavy Chardonnays, over-wooded, full malolactic fermentation, too much butternage. They made these wines that were so planky and dry that you need like 3 glasses of water with a glass of wine. And there was a stage that I'm sure you know of called ABC, anything but Chardonnay.
Mm-hmm.
And what I'm trying to see, which I did in the years of Glencairn, is reduce the wood. It needs to be part of it, but create wines with a bit more finesse. Even more so now, working with this Vermaaklikheid stuff, where it's on strong limestone soils, 8 kilometers as a crow flies to the sea. Making Chardonnays with finesse and changing the ABC, anything but Chardonnay, to always buy Chardonnay.
There we go. I like that.
So that's what I'm going for.
That's your quote. Always buy Chardonnay. I love it. So, thank you very much for spending the time here. Our listeners are sitting here and they want to get hold of you, want to order your wines. How do they do that?
There's a couple of options now, and obviously directly from me, it's www.larmanwines.com is the website, and then all the outlets I mentioned earlier, and then also recently just started with Shopstar. That's also the online way to get it, and I do tend to do my own delivery still at the moment. So if you do buy, you might actually still get to meet the winemaker dropping the wine themselves. So, but yeah, maybe direct is probably best. So look at larmanwines.com and click on to the order sheet, and me or my wife will email within a day usually, and then get the wines out, depending on this lockdown, because you're not allowed to move it around after Thursday. But usually, if one orders on a Monday, Tuesday, you'll still get it before you can't have it on Thursday after evening at 5 o'clock or whatever.
I think what you're talking about now is obviously within striking distance of Paul. What happens if people order from the outskirts of the country or even in Gauteng? How do you manage that?
Well, look, Gauteng is courier service, and that's I would say with the lockdown rules, maybe a week. Otherwise, recommend them going to the likes of Wine Menu, and one or two guys are there. But the best is Dry Dock Liquors as well. They also have my wines. You can still do a week's turnaround. Once you start moving out the country, maybe more like 2 weeks and that type of thing.
Okay, awesome. Arco, it's been a pleasure. Thank you very much. We'll put all the links down in the description. And yes, I'm sure people will find this interesting. Good luck with everything you're doing, and with your move to Honors. And thanks for chatting to us. And we'll definitely chat again in future.
Perfect. No, thanks for your time as well. And hopefully, I was seeing some of my wine friends yesterday. We're saying we're only going to get together at a restaurant when they allow us to have a glass of wine again. I don't know who's going to go out to a steakhouse or something and sit and drink a Diet Coke or something. You need that glass of wine or a beer, that thing. So I'm hoping for the restaurant side that this rule will be lifted quite soon as well.
Or even worse, who goes to a wine estate and don't drink wine if you go out for lunch?
Yeah, yeah, shame. That's the thing, is even if I was at Glencarlo 2 weeks ago, yeah, they're also saying that they probably won't open the restaurant until they have got full option for people to be able to drink wines on the premises.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thanks, hey.
Thank you for supporting our show. If you would like to get more exposure for your business, please have a look at our sponsorship options. Thanks again for supporting About the Winelands. Please follow us on YouTube and on our social media channels. All details and links are in the description. Welcome to About the Winelands. In this show, we'll be chatting to leaders, influencers, wine producers, restaurants, winelands businesses, and other role players. Tune in every Wednesday, Friday, and Sunday for our latest episodes. You will find us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram TV, Google Podcast, Apple Podcast, and Spotify. Hi everyone, and welcome back to About the Winelands. Today I'm speaking to the owner of Friesland Wines in Stellenbosch. Hi Debrani, how are you?
Hi Will, yeah, great talking to you. Thank you so much for the opportunity.
Well, welcome to About the Winelands. Our listeners will be very interested, to hear your story. And can we kick off with that? Can you tell us a bit about yourself and how you became involved in the wine industry?
Thank you. Yes, so I grew up as fourth generation on our Steenkamp family farms. That's in the Bottlerij Hills outside of Stellenbosch. So we've got two family pieces of land, Groenland and Friesland, and they are adjacent. So I grew up there, and then initially I wanted to be a lawyer, so I qualified as an attorney. And I did my master's in trade law, and I decided I'd rather go into wine. So I started working for Destel. I was there for 9 years, 4 years in London, looking after the European wine. Also did my Cape Wine Masters, and I got back, and then I worked at KWV for 7 years as head of global marketing and sales. And then I just thought it's now the time when I turned 40 to do my own thing. So then we launched the Friesland wine brand about close to 2 years ago, say about 20 months ago. And it's been real fun. So it's me and my wife, Marilise, and my sister Maurice, who's also a winemaker.
Wow, that's awesome. So you have known from a young age that you're going to be in the wine industry, although you went and studied law, right?
Yes, yeah, listen, it's in our blood. And the nice thing now is that luckily I could use some of my experience, obviously in contracting internationally and traveling internationally and working with importers and the commercial piece and the legal piece of the business, which I think is very, very important. It's one thing making wine, but obviously to develop markets to sell it profitably is something else. So yeah, I think that stands me in good stead.
So if I hear you correctly, Friesland is more than a wine. It's also, it's also part of the history of a farming enterprise. Can you tell us a little bit more about the history and how did you decide on the name Friesland Wines and your brand and everything?
100%. So the big farm is called Groenland. That's one down the road, and that's fourth generation. Interesting enough, it comes through the lady. So my mom grew up there. My dad came from the Karoo, and then he married my mom. My grandfather passed away, and then my dad sort of bought the farm from his in-laws. And that's where I grew up. And then my dad acquired Friesland, which is a 36 hectare farm just up the road. So Friesland came to the family business a bit later. And it's been farmed as two economic units, but by my father and my brother Piet. And then I said to my dad, before we all get too old, why don't we launch our own trademark? And then I launched Friesland, as I say, October 2018. So the vineyard or the farm has always been there, but now I've launched a trademark to go with a farm called Friesland. The nice thing is we are all from Dutch stock originally, and Friesland is a province in the northern part of the Netherlands. And the first came from that area in the late 1600s. So there's a nice tie back to our Dutch ancestry way back. And that's a nice story.
Do you use any of the Friesland images? I actually had a Friesland whiskey once, which was quite interesting.
No, so at the moment, no, all the imagery we use at the moment is tied back to the farm, which is the view on Table Mountain, Table Bay. There's a little windmill, there's the beautiful vineyards and all that. And then we obviously plan that Dutch heritage, but at this stage it's quite focused on the farm imagery and not yet the Dutch piece of the visuals.
So before you had your own brand, did you basically send your grapes to somebody else? Or did you sell your grapes?
Yes.
Okay, so have you established your own winery now as well with your buildings and everything? Or are you making
So that's a good question. So Groenland with Friesland have been, I think, the longest supplied to KWV, Destel, and then quite a few other smaller wineries also buy from us, very, very well-known farms. At the moment, we use the Groenland wine cellar. They've got a red wine cellar, which is gorgeous. It's a beautiful old cellar built in 1932. And we use that for making the red wines of Groenland and Friesland. That's made there. We don't have a white wine cellar. So there we've got a little JV with our very good friends, Dari Stater from Kaapstad next door, and he assists me on the white wine side. Virtual brand, most of the wines come from Friesland and or Groenland, and then we add in a bit from the Botterij Hills we needed.
Okay, that's excellent. So tell us a little bit about Friesland itself. You know, I see that you're welcoming guests there. What can a guest experience in visiting you guys?
Yeah, so we decided to try and be really modern, and by that I mean two things. A, our sales strategy is focused around B2C, so direct business to consumer. So we don't really do the retail thing. We sell directly to customers, and we work with wine clubs. And when it comes to the experience, it's exactly the same. We decided, obviously it's very expensive as well, but we've got a beautiful tasting room down the road. But we've got a tasting deck in the vineyards. So we're focusing more on experiences rather than, let's say, bricks and mortar. And we've got a tasting deck in the vineyards with a gorgeous little aftak lapa thingy. And you can also braai there or have snacks or whatever. And then we welcome guests and corporate groups of say 10, 20, 30, 40 people. And then we do tastings for them in the vineyards. So that's what we do. That's our angle, obviously weather permitting.
That's very interesting. I think, I mean, we know that the whole world is going from direct to consumer route. So that's a very interesting marketing perspective. Did you decide that because of your international sales experience and the way you saw the industry going?
I think so, yes. And obviously you can now see with the whole C19 thing, I think I was lucky enough that it now happened at the right time. But we just thought that's the way to go. I can see that, I mean, even if you look at Europe, where there's quite a deflationary type of environment, people can't work through middlemen all the time. And then it's also the high fixed cost when it comes to appointing salespeople and big kickbacks to trade and all that. We just can't afford that. And we just thought it just makes much more sense. And people, I think the youngsters, they are into authentic brands and perhaps not all the corporate brands, with all respect to them. So our little unique story is to have a good story to tell and go direct to the consumer.
Well, that's very interesting. I just saw online that there's a brand in the US, I don't know if you know them, called Empathy Wines. They started 18 months ago and they were sold to Constellation for 8 figures in dollars.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, that's a big dream, eh?
They grew Empathy Wines from nothing, you know, just a label, with the social media influence into a massive brand. And like I said, it was sold to Constellation. So there's definitely, I think this whole business to consumer thing in South Africa is still very much in its infancy, and it's going to grow. So,
yes, absolutely. I can't agree more.
No.
Got to mention that what we do as part of that is we do corporate tastings, and people want to see the wine person itself. So I will go to Gauteng or in the Western Cape and I'll do tastings with people, and there's a real tangibility to the brand. And people understand it. They've seen the wine person or the owner or the winemaker, and then they get really loyal, and then it's obviously word of mouth, which is really, really powerful.
Well, that is, and that brings us to the important thing, is that a little bit about the wines that you are making and also your winemaking philosophy.
Okay, so we've got 5 wines in the range. I'm quite a Bordeaux fan, and I think thinking Stellenbosch, obviously Cab and Merlot have to feature. Our Merlots are quite big and robust. And I thought on the red side, I'm going to start with the Merlot Cabernet. It's about a 51-49% blend. So our Merlots are really powerful, but they're still very silky, fruit driven, and obviously Cab jabs it for structure. So I love Bordeaux, so I've got a Merlot Cab, and as you know, Merlot's the biggest of South Africa, and the ladies also love that. So I think that's a nice sort of unique point, because we don't have so many good Merlots in South Africa. And then I've got a Sauvignon Blanc, which is really good. It's more of a tropical fruit flavor style, but it's still very dry, with a residual sugar of less than 3 grams. And that's just for really great enjoyment every day. Then we've got 2 reserve wines. The one is called Brother and Sister Shiraz Grenache, because we also like those big, hearty, sexy, spicy wines. And the Shiraz is the brother in the blend, and the Grenache, obviously the more feminine, delicate sister in the blend. And there's me and my sister Marie, Brother and Sister. It's 85% Shiraz and 15% Grenache. And then we've got a beautiful, lightly wooded Chenin Blanc called Berg en See, Mountain and Sea. Obviously, honoring our beautiful type of mountain that we look out towards, and obviously the sea that we can see in the distance. And that's lightly oaked. And that's a straight Chenin Blanc. And then we have already bottled it, but we're releasing our top flagship, top Cabernet called the M-Class. Named after my wife, Marilise. We're going to launch that October, November this year. And I don't think we want to keep our range too big. That's really our plan. Obviously, Bottleray, Stellenbosch, well known for red varieties, so there will always be a strong red wine focus. But then with the Chenin and the Sauvignon Blanc to complement.
Um, it sounds to me like we need to incorporate tasting and also the way your wines are named, that you are very much focused on the local market. Is that correct, or are you exporting as well?
Yeah, it's a good question. I like the international markets a lot. I mean, obviously you get all the Forex advantages and all that in ship FOB, and there we go. But I think we all agree you do need a strong local footprint, without a doubt. So I'm focusing here. We're doing it town by town and bit by bit. So we're selling quite a lot of wine in Paarl, in Stellenbosch, and the northern suburbs, Pretoria, Johannesburg, and so forth. We've got a strong following here. And then I've had some international shipments to Scandinavia and Canada and the Middle East and all that. So definitely open for exports. I think that's also where the future lies, because the world is so massive. And I'm not sure how the economy is going to stack up in South Africa. But yes, it's very much strong footprint in SA and then rolling out internationally.
Oh, very interesting. So, I mean, you've been involved with a bunch of other stuff as well. I've seen on your website you have a thing called Banner Global Wine Solutions, which seems to me is a consultancy business. And then you're also director of a Dutch trading company. Can you tell us more about this?
Yeah, sure. So I do 4 things in one at the moment. So I've got Friesland. Then I work on a contract basis for the Taderberg Winery, which I really enjoy, because that's a different type of business. They're very big and successful, and that's more Swartland and Paarl. Then I've got Banner, where I do consultancy and I do some private label work internationally with some partners, and we're also looking at an interesting project there. And then Excels is very interesting. We are now launching. We have set up a cooperative in Netherlands. Obviously, the Netherlands is a very compliant jurisdiction, and our plan is to help agribusinesses to internationalize themselves. So I don't want to bore you with all the details, but the long and the short is, if you're a big wine, food, or fruit exporter, and you want substance in the Netherlands, and have a real legitimate basis there, and you want to tie into preferential debtors financing, trade financing, capital grants, and all that, and have bank accounts internationally, then we can help you set that up. And that's quite exciting.
That's a very interesting business, and I think one for the future. A warehousing in the Netherlands office.
Yes, so outsource. So what we do is we have got suppliers that will still ship directly to their, say, retailers in Europe or otherwise, and then we will just manage sort of the finance piece in the middle. But yes, we have got a strong logistic partner with warehousing set up in the Netherlands. So yeah, okay. It's a bit of both.
And you do all kinds of agricultural products.
Yes.
I understand fruit and so. What about the things like flowers? Are you involved with that as well?
That as well. We haven't got flowers on board yet, but yes, all agri goods, even innovative things, whether it extracts or whatever it may be. So it's everything within the agri space we do.
No, that's very interesting. Okay, that's you know, all of this has been turned on its head in the last few months, or this year, with the coronavirus, right? It's been turning the whole world on its head, and it's forced all of us to rethink our business models. Have you given any thought, or are you coming up with any new ideas in this area because of this?
Yes. So on the one hand, I think business to consumer is going to be increasingly important, and by that I mean it's a very strong e-commerce solution. So if I was sort of convinced before, I'm now very convinced. So I would strongly advise you need an e-commerce solution where you sell online direct to consumer. There's no other way to go. I'm not sure how well the on-trade is going to recover or how quickly. Retail, yes, retail will always be there, but obviously they're also now under pressure with the lockdown. So you need a very, very strong e-commerce solution. And I still believe there's value to be found in people that's got a strong brand recognition, that like the people behind the brand and that pass on the message. And obviously, I don't need to tell you that the margins are also a bit better. Obviously, if you go through all these other channels or middlemen, there's not a lot of money left at the end. So the direct way of going, I think, is the way to go. And this is now just the ideal time for that. So I'm busy with the whole project there. And then, as I say, also to internationalize ourselves through Excel or otherwise, and then just build a good fund whilst doing it.
So would you, this is an interesting concept, would you actually expand your direct-to-consumer business to sell direct to consumers in say, Europe as well, from a base in the Netherlands?
We're going to try that.
That's going to be very interesting, because I think you're going to be one of the few people that actually do that from South Africa, which is, in terms of your direct-to-consumer in South Africa, your logistics, I think that's been one of the reasons why, you know, why South African hasn't caught up onto the whole internet craze of buying, you know, Amazon type thing, is because of maybe a logistical problems. How is it going so far? Is this improving?
Okay, so it used to be good. Obviously, the past month was crazy because we have got a logistic partner in, say, Johannesburg. And what we do is we ship a pallet or two of wine up and it stands in the warehouse and then we have it delivered. Okay. But they are really geared to do business to business, to licensed outlets. And now everyone is now ordering from home and they just couldn't cope with a big load. So I think in principle, yes, everyone is set up, but no one obviously expected this whole craze to happen now during the month of June when everyone just started ordering. So usually in South Africa, you've got a few options. Either you sell to a wine club and they sell on, or you use a courier company directly from your home. That's expensive, but it goes quicker. Or thirdly, you've got a warehousing solution where you carry stock in the regions and then you deliver from there. So it'll take you a bit of longer time to get it to the consumer, but it'll be more affordable. And unfortunately, courier charges, sometimes people see that as a barrier to entry. They think it's too expensive. But I still think overall, I think it's still worth your while rather than having to go down to, say, a supermarket or a restaurant and buy the wines there at an even higher sort of markup. But no one has really figured that out. And obviously, wine is different from other consumer goods. If you go on Takealot or Amazon, it's easy to buy something that's really sort of a consumer item. But wine, people still want to taste the wine, feel it. There's sort of a tangibility there. So people are getting into wine business e-commerce wise, but I think it's a different way of telling a story relative to other consumer goods.
I think I just wanted to ask you before I ask my next question is things like a third-party solution like Takealot, is that a solution or not really?
It's hard to judge. I know about brands. I mean, Takealot's a fantastic brand, make no mistake. I'm not sure how big they are in wine. For some people it is. For other people, they sell it like just online or go to wine clubs that specialize in wine sales. I think the jury is still out of that one.
Well, I think, you know, I talked about Empathy Wines, and I think the secret was actually exactly what you're saying, brand. The guys managed to build a brand in a very short time, and I think that wins the game in the direct-to-consumer business. But so on that is, how are you going to differentiate your brand from other? Because I mean, every wine business now is putting up an e-commerce shop and trying to go this route. So how are you going to differentiate your brand and build your brand in this area?
And that's an excellent question. We said we've got one of two options. Either we try to be unique or we try to be ourselves. And we thought we'd rather be ourselves. So, you know, there are thousands of wine brands out there. We can't be 100% unique. That's just impossible. But what we are going to do is we're going to try and be focused and disciplined. So we say, A, we're a family business. B, we are Stellenbosch. So all our wines are one of origin Stellenbosch. That means that we're not going to compete at different price points in different regions. That's what we do, even if it costs a bit more. And then we're going to focus on that, let's say, handcrafted, bespoke storytelling image. Even our marketing on social, otherwise, just focused on that, on just good, honest wines delivered to your door, one of origin Stellenbosch, sense of place. Here's the vineyard, here's the view on Table Mountain, and this is the type of wines that we sell. Hopefully, quite a, let's say, a humble, accessible type of approach, rather than being too big and flashy.
I think what you're saying is right, but also, you know, the fact that you're going to be yourselves means that, and you mentioned the concept of storytelling, and also social media. I think social media is the perfect platform to tell a story. I mean, we've got all the things like YouTube and Facebook and you know, all those things. So how are you guys actually, are you investing in that, in your story, documented and telling that story? Because I think story is what builds your brand.
Exactly. So what I strongly suggest is that if you want to do something, have a strong content plan. You can't just start telling a story. So what we do is, for instance, there are 4 weeks in a month, and we say every week we do something else. We've got a fan of the month, then a recipe of the month, then a newsworthy event of the month, and then I recorded a video series with my dad. And as I said recently, but that's a great 7-series sort of series where I interviewed him. We talked about Friesland, and every month I'm going to post one of those. So it seems like it's very spontaneous, which it is to an extent. But at the back end, I strongly believe that there's got to be strategic planning. And so if you want to tell a story, what is the story? And then how do you tell it? And make sure you sort of make it in a very disciplined, focused, strategic journey that you actually take the consumer on, rather than just saying, hey, I'm having a good sip of wine, do you like my wine? Because that's a bit empty. I mean, everyone can do that. The story must be very, very intentional.
Very, very interesting. I mean, you can see you have international experience, and your KWV experience comes to mind. So that helps. So
yeah, well, listen, I must just say, it's not easy. Eh? There are so many wine brands, and the one is cheaper than the other. It's not easy, make no mistake. But I believe you can't take over the whole world, but there will be enough people that like your wine, and then I suppose that must be good enough for you. And for us, it is.
I think to win in the direct consumer business, it's really that you've got to build brand rather than go for short-term sales. You know, you've got two concepts. You've got the one where you've got a sales funnel, you have a mailing list, you have a special, you collect email addresses, and then you just keep on selling. But ultimately, I think that's going to lose to somebody who's building a long-term brand that has a story that people start telling to other people.
Yes.
In the short term, it takes a bit longer, but in the long term, I think that is where we are going to. Because if you think about yourself and your use of your smartphone, how many times do you actually consume content, and how many times do you actually look at an ad? I think the world of advertising is gone. It's all about your right content, right?
Exactly.
So that's very, very interesting. Your wine journey, I mean, yes, it's been quite interesting and diverse. What is the most important thing that you've learned?
I know it's going to sound cliched, but relationships are really everything. Most of the people that I work with these days are people that I've met along the way and that I got along well with, and they're still friends and partners in some sort of way, whether it's getting wine from or selling wine to or marketing or working together or importing the market. So that's critically important. I think in the wine game, it is a feel-good game. When you go to a big wine fair internationally, people are still laughing and toasting, and you should never sort of lose that. So yes, it's a business. You need to be commercially astute. You must understand your product costings, the value chain, what it ends up on shelf, what all the AMP or the marketing stuff and the OPEX that you need to spend. So you need to understand the numbers, make no mistake. That's one piece, but then as I say, relationships are critically important. If you can get along with people and make decent wine, you've got a winning recipe. It's easier said than done, but I think that's the ideal.
Oh, that's awesome. So the brain, I need to, I mean, you're in the wine industry, so you have to give us either your own wine quote, or you can steal one from somebody else, your favorite wine quote.
I'm going to say add value. And that means everything. Add value to life. Just be a decent person. Make decent wine difficult, or make life difficult for your consumers, or try and screw in. If you're a decent person, you sell a decent bottle of wine, you're going to make decent friends, and you're going to have a great time.
Oh, very, 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 very good quote. Thank you very much.
It's quite simplistic, but yeah, that's the motto I live by.
I like it. I like it. Add value. I mean, that's what we try to do in life, right? To everyone we meet. So, if people want to get hold of you, I mean, you were just saying direct to consumer. So consumers are listening. How do they get hold of you, Brian?
Yeah, thank you for that, Will. So obviously our website, www.frieslandwines.com, or they can send an email to me or my wife. Mine is Debruin, DEBRUIN, at frieslandwines.com, or my wife, Marilise, MARILISE, Marilise at frieslandwines.com. But everything is on our website as well. And obviously we're on Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn and Instagram, and the Friesland Wines.
Okay, awesome. So what we'll do is we'll actually put all the links in the description below this recording, so that people can get that. And all that's left for me is to say thank you, Debruin, for spending the time. I know you've been busy. You're busy, and also, you know, I have to make new plans because of recent events. So thank you very much for spending the time, and it's appreciated.
Thank you all, and please come and visit me when it's spring. We are going to sit there in the vineyards, and we're going to toast on good times. We're going to have a great glass of wine together in the Stellenbosch vineyards. Thank you so much.
That would be great. Thank you very much. Cheers.
Thanks, Will. Talk to you soon.
Thank you for supporting our show. If you would like to get more exposure for your business, please have a look at our sponsorship options. Thanks again for supporting About the Winelands. Please follow us on YouTube and on our social media channels. All details and links are in the description. Welcome to About the Winelands. In this show, we will be chatting to leaders, influencers, wine producers, restaurants, and other role players. Tune in every week for our latest episode. You will find us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram TV, Spotify, Apple Podcast, and Google Podcast. Hi everyone, and welcome back to About the Winelands. Today I'm speaking to Gerard van der Walt. Gerard is the CEO of Paardeberg Winery. Welcome to About the Winelands, Gerard.
Thank you, Will. It's a great pleasure to be with you this morning.
No, it's our pleasure to have you, and thank you for taking the time. I know you guys are busy.
Yeah, of course, the world is upside down, and we have to deal with what we've been given. So we are making all sorts of plans to see this through and make sure that we're continuing in business, but it certainly is a busy time.
So Gerard, what would be interesting is if you could tell our listeners how you got involved in, a bit about yourself and how you became involved in the wine industry.
Sure. Sure. It started many years ago. So after I completed my articles, I decided to leave auditing, and I started as a financial accountant in the old Stellenbosch Farmers Winery. That was 1989. So I guess you can call me a veteran of 31 years in the wine business. And yeah, through starting at SFW, I've worked in different departments, finance, and then later on into corporate strategy. Eventually, it took me to the US, where I launched Savannah Cider in the US for SFW. But at the same time, that's when SFW and Distillers Corporation formed Distel. So I really went over under the Distel banner. And then shortly after that, they asked me to run the European operations for Distel, sales marketing operation from London. And that's where I spent a number of years before I returned back to Cape Town, back into a strategy role at the head office of Distel in Stellenbosch. Yeah, so I left Distel, I think it was just 2 or 3 years after returning back from overseas. And for the last 10 years, I've been at Paardeberg, where I'm the CEO and looking after the business development for the company. So yeah, that's from a business point of view. But just from a personal point of view, I can tell you that I've got 5 kids, all from the same wife, and the youngest is 12.
Wow.
So yeah, I need to work for at least 10 more years, but I really don't mind, because I think the wine industry is great fun, and I love going to work every day.
Where in the US were you stationed?
I lived in Boston, and yeah, so we took the family over to Boston. We were there for quite a short period of time, because the merger of SFW and Distillers dictated the process, and I had to after about 8 months, I think 9 months, I had to move to London. So it was a short stay in the US, but utterly enjoyable.
Okay, interesting. So Paardeberg Wines, can you share a bit of the history of the cellar and the winery?
Sure. Well, we started in 1941, so next year Paardeberg will be what you can call an octogenarian in years, but we are going to be as fit and as nimble and with it as a 21-year-old, because we are still very innovative and progressive in our thinking and the way that we drive the business. But it started in 1941 with a person by the name of Jan Rousseau, who got together with a couple of farmers in the area near the Paardeberg or Paardeberg, and he decided to form a cooperative and appoint their own winemaker, to basically achieve better pricing for themselves on a collective basis. So we adopted the name Paardeberg, as we are at the foothills of the Paardeberg mountain. There's a bit of an anomaly. If you just look at our logo, we have a zebra. So just to clear that up, you know, the Dutch, when they looked at these quaggas walking on the Paardeberg mountain, they said that's een wilde paard, one wild horse. Yeah, so we decided to keep the zebra, and yeah, so that's really something that distinguishes us, make us very recognizable. You'll see that through all our products and everywhere in our media. So since 1941, Paardeberg has been quite innovative. We, I think, was one of the first people to really appoint a viticulturist in those days. But I think we really were put on the map by somebody by the name of Joseph Huskinson, who was a winemaker at Paardeberg for 38 years. And he was trained under Günter Brösel at Nederburg. So he brought a whole lot of knowledge to Paardeberg and really, you know, put us on the map in terms of winemaking. And then from there on, yeah, it just progressed. Nowadays, we are what we call a group of companies, where we have two facilities that process grapes. One at Paardeberg in the Paarl area, and then the other one at Bottleray in Stellenbosch. We're also renting another facility from Boland in Paarl. So we have got quite a diverse and big business. We have 32 shareholders, so all producers from the area, and they supply us with grapes on a contractual basis. But Paardeberg is very brand focused. So what we've done is we've invested a tremendous amount in barrel space and small batch processing. So a lot of our brands are managed like an estate, if I can call it that way, from the vineyard, very intense vineyard management, right through to the cellar. So we have brands, we sell also wines to other brand owners. And then we've got some distribution company in South Africa. So it's quite a diverse organization at this point in time.
It sounds fascinating. Have you guys followed the trend in the 90s by changing from a members cooperative to a private company then as well?
Yeah, I think we were probably a bit later than the rest. It was 2012 when we made the conversion.
Mm-hmm.
But that was just really a statutory conversion. I think in essence, or yeah, we were already operating as a market-driven organization before that.
Okay.
But yeah, I think that was the actual date that we made the conversion.
So would you accept grapes also that are not from your shareholders or buy-in, or does everything come from your historically the farms that started Paardeberg?
Yeah, I think we've outgrown our normal supply base. So we do contract grapes in as well. But when it comes to our brands in particular, we're obviously very fussy, and we really just make sure that those are from the area. Because, and we'll talk maybe hopefully a little bit later about our winemaking philosophy and how we approach things.
Absolutely.
But yeah, I think most of it is from the area.
So talking about that, I mean, you guys have expanded into more than just a winery. People can actually come there and experience things when they come to Paardeberg. So if a guest come to you, what can they expect? Or, when you are fully open for guests, what experiences do you provide?
Yeah. Well, when we are fully open, which is hopefully not too long from now, with the lockdown hopefully coming to an end soon, you can come to do some wine tasting. We've got a fantastic modern facility that we revamped, I think, about 3-4 years ago. Where you can do wine pairings. We've got some interesting stuff there. We've done some chocolate wine pairings. We've done some different Shannon expressions, a whole variety of kind of trying to be unique to our environment and what we produce, kind of tastings. We have a restaurant. It's called Eat at Paardeberg. It's run by Rob Hahn. Rob is actually well-known guy in the area, but some interesting information about Rob is that he was actually one of the the chefs that were selected at President Mandela's inauguration ceremony at the Union buildings. And
Wow.
a few of them were handpicked, and they did a private function for him. Yeah, so Rob's got some history there. So yeah, if you want to meet the guy who cooked for Mr. Mandela, then you're welcome to come meet him at Paderberg. There's a photo of him as well, of the event. And yeah, so we've got a restaurant. It's really a family-orientated restaurant, so very easy kind of environment. Lots of open space outside where the children can run around a little bit and the parents can relax. We've got a jungle gym, and sometimes we also put up a jumping castle for the kids. So yeah, it's quite safe, kid-friendly, and parents can relax. So yeah, good food, great wine, and then yeah, there's also some venues as well where we can do functions, and I can maybe elaborate a little bit on that if you want.
Yeah, I'd love to hear, but I see you do weddings and other events, so I'd love to hear what you actually offer. It's always nice for people when they're looking for event venues to know what is in the area.
We've got a function hall, which can, so it's got a beautiful chandelier, a roof, chandeliers all over. The capacity is 150 for a wedding. So yeah, it's got some character as well. Beautiful wooden doors that was part of the cellar from the word go. So some old wood there, and it's got a lovely view. So balcony as well, where you can look out over the vineyards. That's weddings, and then of course seminars. So for seminars, we can probably put in a few more people in terms of the seating, and it's quite affordable as well. So if people are interested, they're more than welcome to contact us and explore the packages that we've got for them. We have an area called the Kwacha. The Kwacha is a horseshoe-shaped tasting room where we can do bespoke tastings with a winemaker. You just book beforehand, and we can do a very specific tasting for you, and a far more in-depth for the connoisseur who wants to maybe just delve in a little bit deeper into the wines and the way that we make them. And then we'd also do little workshop or provide workshop venues for companies that want to maybe do team building and just break away with a small group to strategize, or whatever the reason they want to just hire an outside venue. And we can couple with that, of course, some fun activities. So if you want to do the team build and a wine pairing, we will do that. And we'll do that in our dryland room. It's a modern boardroom facility. Yeah, and then of course, what we're trying to do from time to time is also have some fun events. So about, I think it was I better think now. It was about 10 years ago, 9 years ago, that we started with what we call the Family Festival. We actually called it the October Festival because it was held in October, but there was no beer. But yeah, so the Family Festival is where we draw in a lot of people, and we basically just have music and eats and just a fun family day where people can relax and become very popular. So we've continued with that every year. And the Family Festival, hopefully we can hold one again this year. I'm just a bit concerned about when we will unlock for that kind of thing. But yeah, certainly. So we have that. We've expanded that. We've done the Pinotage and Biltong Festival at Paderberg. We started last year with the Chenin Blanc Festival. And maybe just on that point, Paderberg is very well known for Chenin Blanc. It's just such a beautiful grape that is suited to our area. And that's why we call the function hall even the Chenin Blanc Hall. And we also have this Chenin Blanc Festival that we now plan to run annually.
Are these festivals organized by yourselves as principal? In other words, these are festivals that you actually originate and organize yourselves?
Yeah, the Family Festival is a self-organized festival. The Pinotage and Biltong was a festival run by an outside party. But the Chenin Blanc one, we started with using a third party just to facilitate, but we do plan to continue with that ourselves going forward. And just to make it a bit more, how can I put it, accessible for the wider wine public, we've decided to draw in other wine farms as well. So for the Chenin Blanc Festival, we'll certainly invite other Chenin producers to come and spend a day with us and also have their table where they will show their Chenin. You know, for us, it's important to show the capability and diversity of Chenin that our country can offer. You know, we've registered the trademark Home of Chenin Blanc. So we do see ourselves as the home.
Very clever.
But we don't mind sharing our home with other Chenin producers because we think that, you know, if everybody starts talking about Chenin Blanc, it's got lots of potential to become one of South Africa's signature wine varieties, next to Pinotage, of course. Yeah, so we do events, and then we've got plenty of plans just to extend the experience for visitors to our facility. It's very safe. It's completely fenced off, the whole property. Good access control, and of course nowadays very safe. Also with regards to virus, if you're worried about viruses, you know, we follow all the right protocols and make sure that people are safe as possible.
Yeah, which is obviously important in today's environment. You mentioned the Chenin Blanc, which brings us to the wines, and you know, this is obviously the most important thing. So tell us a bit about the wines that you are producing and also your winemaking philosophy.
Sure. So I think maybe the one thing that we need to understand about our area and our wines that you will find in our brands is that it is pretty much influenced by dry land vineyards, so unirrigated vineyards, which we have a lot of. About 60% of our vineyards are not irrigated. And what we've done is we've really owned that platform as well. So if you look at our ranges, I can quickly speak to that. You know, we have what we call the classic range. And then we have above that, the vineyard collection range. And then above that, the dry land collection. Each one of those ranges will have a component of dry land vineyard wine in it. And we strongly believe that these unirrigated vineyards really produce the best fruit. You know, I remember one day also watching a TV program on the BBC where Dan Jager, who was the buyer for one of the big supermarkets, remarked, we all know that the best wines are made from dry land vineyards. And I certainly concur with that because it's small berries and the fruit is concentrated. So you have a deep color. You've got lovely fruit flavors because, yeah, the flesh to skin ratio, I think, is what makes the difference there. Maybe unlike highly irrigated vineyards, where you might find that the wines are not as deep in color and maybe a little bit less thinner on the palate. So dry land is important for us, and you know, we really believe that is what distinguishes our wines. We have a viticulturist that, of course, manages the vineyards. We classify all these vineyards into their quality, their ability based on terroir, history. As you know, we've got long history, so we keep good records, and therefore, over time, we've worked out exactly which wines, which vineyards, which slopes are producing the best wines, and we've, you know, obviously matched those and mapped it to our brands across the quality spectrum. Lots of hard work in the vineyards. We do very sustainable kind of farming. You know, it's dry land vineyards, a lot of it, and we do cover crops to protect the soils. We also use the ladybirds and some other what do you call the gogakis that actually eat the vitrus. What do you call it? I'm sorry, I'm struggling with English here. but yeah, so we try and do things right in the vineyards, but at the end of the day, you know, it shows in your wines. And then from a wine team point of view, I mean, we've got a whole group of winemakers headed up by Albertus Lowe, who's also been in the industry for many, many years. He's got red winemaker, white winemaker, and a small cellar winemaker. And they all work together. You know, I think one can safely say a lot of the wine's quality is made in the vineyards. And then in the cellar, of course, you have an opportunity to enhance it or destroy it. And I have to say that our team has done extremely well over years. So if you go look at our website and the accolades that we've received for our wines, it really is a long, long list. I mean, I remember just shortly after we launched the Dryland collection, completely made from unirrigated vineyards. We won the best producer of the year at the Michelangelo, and it was mostly those wines
Wow.
that really came through. And it was just, I think, 2013 or 2014, somewhere there. Yeah, so I really, if you want to ask me, you know, what really distinguishes us is the fact that we have got dryland components to our wines. And also maybe another interesting thing is that we do try and bring in very unique varietals and to try and be a little bit different. So we had a straight Cinsault. We believe it's one of the only dryland bush vine Cinsauts. We have a Cinsault Rosé. We've got a Malbec in our range. We've got Grenache Blanc. These are all wines that we put in our let's call it the innovative space, and the vineyard collection is the range that houses these wines. But then of course we have got also interesting stuff in our dryland and classic ranges. We do MCC sparkling, Chenin based sparkling, and also Pinot Noir Chardonnay based sparkling. Yeah, so innovation is very important. We recently also launched wine in a can at the very basic level. So we've got a range called the Soft Smooth Red range. Yeah, so maybe let me stop there for a minute.
Well, I'd like to ask you about the can wine, because that seems to be something that's going to become a trend. Do you think it'll become a trend? Will it just be a fad? I see the Michelangelo awards are going to now actually reward, or they're going to have the same thing for canned wines now that they have for normal wines in terms of their ratings and stuff.
Yeah. Look, I mean, if I have to say personally, I mean, you know, I really do like to drink wine out of a glass. But I do think we need to recognize that there's a young new generation coming up that you know, they have different conventions and different ways of thinking about things, and yeah, so we've really launched our wine in a can for that reason. So we are targeting young people across the spectrum, and we really want to, particularly in South Africa, draw also from the underdeveloped wine market. So, you know, we really need more people to adopt wine and bring them into the wine category. So, you know, it's early days for us, but if I just look at the reports around the world, and South Africa does seem to follow trends often. The US, for instance, has just run out of cans, and they said it's not because, you know, there was a problem with can production. The problem was that they didn't anticipate the demand. So the consumer demand was of such a nature that they couldn't supply because of a can shortage. And we find everywhere around the world, it's about sustainability as well. You know, people want to move to carbon-friendly packaging. I think convenience is a big factor. You know, weight, if you're traveling on an airline, and I think there's just so many applications for wine in a can. But the important thing, I think, to remember about wine in a can is, you know, you mustn't see it as a cheap wine alternative. We really need to put the very best wines we can also in the can. Because yeah, it's recruiting new consumers into the category, and you can't do that with wines that don't stand up to the challenge.
Well, it's very interesting. You're talking about the younger market, and I think the wine drinkers, the young market for wine drinkers are now the millennials really. And, you know, they're also interested in things like you said, sustainability, but also things about additives in the wines, like, you know, vegan, the whole idea of vegan wines and stuff like that. Is this something that you guys are addressing? How do you find, you know, that issue?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, for us to go completely vegan friendly does mean that we have to make some adjustments in the cellar. But what we can at this point already tell you is that all our red wines are vegan friendly. And we've actually advertised that on some of our products, so that the classic range. We've incorporated the vegan sticker on the back of the label. We have done some trials on the white wines to try and move that over to vegan friendly. We, in all probability, will do so from 2021. For us, it was very important to keep quality. So changing your process to stay completely vegan friendly mustn't mean that you compromise on quality. And that's why we haven't moved already in this year, but next year, the white wine should, particularly for those branded ranges, be vegan friendly as well. It is quite big. If you look at the overseas market, again, the trends there, the Scandinavian markets are very, very focused on vegan friendly, organic, and that kind of thing. So yeah, we are very much trying to also speak to the vegan and sustainability audience.
Well, that's awesome. So we're talking about the Scandinavian markets and stuff like that. Where are your wines sold? And what is your, I mean, are you primarily exported? You sell in the local market? How does that mix work?
Yeah, so we are very much an export-led organization. So most of our wines, our turnover is derived from the overseas market, which of course at the moment is standing us in good stead. The rand that is quite weak, so export profitability is quite good. And the fact that we can continue to do business in the international market right now, although we can't do it in the South African market. But we already embarked, I think I mentioned earlier on, you know, that we are a market-driven organization. So we started exploring international markets, sure, a long time ago already, 2009, or even before that, we were in the international market, but we really stepped it up. You know, we've invested heavily in people. So we've beefed up our human capital infrastructure. Mm-hmm. And at this point in time, we sell all over the world. So from China, Malaysia, Hong Kong, we sell to Russia, in Africa, Kenya, Belgium, Holland, Germany, Sweden, Finland, Norway, UK. We do Canada, US. Yeah, you know, all different kind of markets. We've invested a lot of effort in exploring the African market, so there's a lot of time and money going into that, and also the Far East, so China, and then the US. Europe, we do good business in, and we continue to support those markets. But it is a little bit more mature, and we think that there's a lot of value to be derived from the US in particular, albeit that it's a tough market. It's really not an easy market. Many people have tried over many years, and it's not a walk in the park. You know, the Americans are complicated. They've got a 3-tier system, and you've got to get through all that complexity and find the right distributor.
Interesting. It's also interesting that I've spoken to a few places who've mentioned the African market, and it seems that there's quite a bit of growth and also maybe a premium in price in exporting to Africa at the moment.
Yeah, I think, at the moment, right now, I think worldwide pricing is a little bit under pressure, unfortunately.
Yeah, of course.
We've seen, particularly in France and Spain, the guys have actually resorted to approaching their government to distill wines just to get rid of surplus. But I think, yeah, generally speaking, your on-trade is where you can achieve the better pricing. In Africa, there's a lot of tourism, a lot of on-trade facilities where you can achieve good pricing. But there's also a good market at the entry level. So at the moment, I think that side of the business, unfortunately, or fortunately, depending on where you are, is growing, at the expense of the more pricier wines. But yeah, there's great opportunity in Africa. If we look at the industry players in South Africa, they've really invested in Africa over a long time as well, recognizing that the predictions of Africa being a potential economic powerhouse. So we do hope that that's true. As I said, we're putting a lot of time and effort into it, and we're already seeing the benefits coming through.
Interesting. I see on your website you also have a wine club. Can you explain a bit more about that?
Yes, indeed. The good news is that there are no joining fees. So all you have to do to get yourself active as a member is to buy 12 bottles or more of our wines, and you can then activate your membership automatically. And then thereafter, we only require you to buy 6 cases per annum to keep your membership active. If you do, you can get 10% off your wine purchases at the classic range. And for higher up, you can get 15% off the vineyard and the dryland and our iconic wine ranges. In addition, you can get a free tasting for you and 3 friends every year. Receive 10% discount on venue hires for weddings, parties. And then you get invitations to exclusive wine club events where we will do wine tastings with a winemaker, educational kind of tastings. And then, of course, free delivery to all the main centers in South Africa if you buy more than 1,000 Rand worth of wine.
That's awesome. So if you're planning a wedding this year, it's a good thing to, before you buy the ring, to actually join the wine club first, because you're going to save all over.
Absolutely. So are you planning a wedding, Will?
I don't think so. Not yet. Not again.
Let me know.
I'll let you know if I